I'm excited to be with you today. Before we start the event today, I would like to introduce Avi Mukherjee, Dean of the Lewis College of Business, Brad D. Smith Schools of Business, who will say a few words about the series and the college and introduce the presenters.
Thank you, Nancy, and welcome to HUD 2020 Inside Small Business webinar series. We thank you for taking the time to attend this event. This is the 7th in a series of webinars given by the college with the goal of helping the local economy and its small businesses emerge from the COVID-19 crisis. Today, we have a special event in store. It's titled A New Decade in Marketing. It features Kipp, Bodnar, Chief Marketing Officer of HubSpot, in conversation with Ben Eng, Associate Professor of Marketing and Entrepreneurship and Executive Director of the iCenter, and Trisha Ball, Associate Director of the Brad D. Smith Incubator and the iCenter. Ben and Trisha will set the stage for an engaging discussion about how marketing is becoming more digital and more intelligent and what this means for future marketing professionals and for companies and their customers. After the discussion, Ben, Trisha, and Kipp will answer questions from the audience. Before we start the event today, I would like to say a few words about the Lewis College of Business and its mission, which is to promote economic development in the regional community and beyond. We do this by implementing our strategic priorities for external engagement and economic development, including lifelong learning programs, the Business and Economics Research Symposium, the Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series, and the CEO panel that many of you attended last spring. The college has outreach centers, including the Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation, or the iCenter, that helps small businesses innovate with a focus on design thinking. The college also cooperates with the Brad D. Smith Business Incubator to help promote entrepreneurship throughout the region. The presentation today is one example of this cooperation. As the nation and the state start rebuilding businesses and economies coming out of the pandemic closures and lockdown, the Lewis College of Business is committed to supporting our local businesses, alumni, and other stakeholders in re-engaging, recharging, and redesigning their business models. Hence, we have developed this webinar series that will consist of presentations through the fall and the spring every alternate week. We hope that you enjoy today's presentation and take something out of it to use in your business or professional activities to make West Virginia and the surrounding area a better place for business and community engagement. I will now turn the presentation over to Ben and Trisha, who will introduce Kipp, Bodnar and begin the panel discussion.
Thank you, Dean Avi, and thank you all for joining us this morning. My name is Trisha Ball, and I'm the Associate Director of the Brad D. Smith Business Incubator and the Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation, also known as the iCenter. Before we get started this morning, I just wanted to take a minute or two to discuss both of these organizations. As the Dean mentioned, the iCenter is housed within the Lewis College of Business and promotes entrepreneurship and innovation using design for delight, which is Intuit's approach to design thinking. This customer-driven process for solving difficult problems is the common thread between the leading companies in Silicon Valley today. Last year, we reached 500 students and stakeholders across the state with our hands-on D4D workshops with the mission of reframing the economic future of the state and region. We reached an additional 600 people through our speaking engagements on entrepreneurship and innovation, assisted 20 small businesses and aspiring entrepreneurs through private consulting, and hosted the statewide West Virginia Innovation and Business Model Competition. The Brad D. Smith Business Incubator is located in downtown Huntington and is a partnership between the Marshall University Research Corporation, the Brad D. Smith Schools of Business, and the Robert C. Byrd Institute for Advanced Manufacturing. We're a mixed-use incubator, meaning we help entrepreneurs from a variety of industries. The incubator offers support to early-stage startups to help them grow and scale by providing office space, mentoring, networking, and technical assistance in areas like marketing, accounting, and access to capital. Our affiliation with Marshall University gives our clients a direct line to the expertise of the university's faculty and to students for internships and experiential learning opportunities. The goal of the incubator is to create an innovation ecosystem or startup culture in Huntington that creates jobs and strengthens the economy. I would like to thank Dr. Langton, Dean Avi, and the College of Business for letting us be a part of this webinar series. I'd now like to turn things over to Ben Eng, who's going to introduce today's featured guest.
Hello to everyone with us today. It's very exciting to be here. We not only have people tuning in from Marshall University, but places as far east as North Carolina, as far north as Michigan, and as far west as California. Welcome to you all as we chat with today's special guest, Kipp Bodnar, about the new decade of marketing. If you have any questions for Kipp during our discussion, please type them in the chat box and we'll pick a few of them to ask at the end. Kipp Bodnar is the Chief Marketing Officer of HubSpot, where he leads their global marketing strategy to drive awareness and demand for their inbound marketing and sales software products. Kipp is an industry-leading speaker and blogger, the co-author of the B2B social media book, and an alum of Marshall. Kipp, good morning and welcome home, my friend.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
All right. Great to have you here with us, Kipp. I mentioned in the intro that you're an alum of Marshall. Can you tell us a bit more about your background and connection to the state and to Marshall?
Yeah, I give for everybody's background. So I grew up in Williamstown, West Virginia, which I can actually say the name of Williamstown instead of near Parkersburg, which is what I normally have to tell people who are not from the state of West Virginia. So people on this call actually know where I'm talking about. So I grew up in Williamstown. My parents are both elementary school teachers in the area, and basically went to elementary school, high school, and upon graduating high school, I was basically like many students in West Virginia, right? I was presented with the option of going to Marshall or WVU or going out of state, taking on a bunch of student loans and everything. And I'd gotten some great scholarship opportunities and everything to go to Marshall. So I chose Marshall, decided that I was going to study at the journalism school in Marshall because I was interested in public relations at the time, and then moved to Huntington and had a fun 4 years in Huntington before then moving to North Carolina for a little while, and then eventually making my way up to Boston, Massachusetts about a decade ago.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for filling us in on that. So we actually have some Marshall students tuning into this fireside chat with us right now. Can you step in the time machine and tell them a little bit about 21-year-old Kipp? So maybe Kipp's a junior at marketing right now, or junior in the advertising school. What kind of student were you? Did you think you'd become the CMO for one of the leading marketing tech companies in the world?
I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, right? All I knew, I'll be honest with you, all I really knew is that I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see the world, and I knew that the world was a big, awesome place, and there was so much you could learn. And I knew to see the world, what I knew at the time, this is not maybe the best advice, but I knew I could be an okay student, but I needed to be a great student of the world. I needed to do so when I was 21, I was doing internships, Charleston Area Medical Center, and then I was at Charles Ryan, and then I did a bunch of internships. I was basically driving to Charleston, most days of the week to do internships there, or I was working on the school paper. I was trying to figure out some type of hustle that's going to give me breadth of knowledge outside of kind of the core curriculum. So I was having fun hanging out with friends, but I was also trying to figure out if I want to see the world, I need to start getting some practical business experience and work experience as early as possible. And so that was kind of my focus at the time. And this is also a long time ago. Remember, Napster still exists. You could go and download music on Napster. This is, Spotify was not even a thing. So it's a long, long time ago now.
I love to hear that. If students ask me my number one piece of advice, I always say, make sure you get internships. You're either going to get better at what you want to do, or you're going to realize you don't want to do that at all, and you can kind of change course and go to something else. I love to hear that. Reflecting on your time at Marshall, can you tell us about any inflection points from college that shaped who you are today, or any aha movements or moments or big pivots that you made?
You know what? I think my advice for students that are on here and everything else, it's I remember kind of junior, senior year at college, you start hearing what people are interested in doing, the types of jobs they're going after, and all of those things, right? And from that, you realize actually the thing that matters is that you need to have strong conviction about something. And you have to have a strong thesis on something and go after it. For me, my thesis came a couple years after graduating. I remember having a conversation with an early friend of mine who was a web developer. He's like, "Oh, man, you're learning how to do this website thing. That's really going to change what you're able to do." And I was like, "Yeah, the internet is totally changing marketing, and it's this level playing field where nobody knows anything about it right now. And if I have a strong thesis and can teach myself, I have the opportunity to be successful." And so I think when you're kind of in your second phase of college, junior, senior year, you have to think about start thinking about what that thesis is. What is the thing that I am really going to go deep on and really learn and hone skills on? Because I think it has a really great long-term trajectory for myself and for my career.
That's some great advice, and we're going to get more into the digital marketing piece here in a second. But really quick, before we jump into some marketing specific questions, can you tell us a little bit about your career path from journalism student at Marshall to CMO of HubSpot? So I know you said you went to North Carolina before you went to Boston. So can you tell us a little bit more about that path? And then can you also share with any of the Marshall students what enabled the growth in you that allowed you to become who you are today?
I think success, I have had the great pleasure to talk to Brad Smith and a lot of really smart people over my life. And what's interesting is those people have a lot of commonalities. And I'm sure, Ben and Tricia, you noticed that because you talk to them just as much or more than I do. And you talk to great business leaders all the time. And there's a few things that I think come across. And one of those things is that they have a deep passion. They really like what they do. They're not just phoning it in. They not only do they have conviction about what they're doing, but they like and enjoy what they're doing at a deep, deep level. The other thing that they have is they have an innate humbleness and leadership ability to help people follow them without, demanding that they be followed, right? And so when I think about what that means, if you're a student or if you're a business owner or a leader today, like what does that actually mean? So for me, I started with learning the skill. I was in North Carolina. We'd moved down there because my now wife of 13 years got a job teaching before we were even engaged down there. And we moved down there and I discovered the internet. And I discovered that I'm somebody who loves unfair advantages. So what is my unfair advantage? The internet brought an unfair advantage because everybody had the same level of knowledge. And I was like, okay, all I have to do is learn faster than everybody else. And if you can learn faster than everybody else, you can be successful. And so that was job one. And then job two is, if I can learn faster than everybody else, can I teach better than everybody else? Because if I can teach the people around me, teach my coworkers, teach my customers, then they're going to follow me. They're going to want to be with somebody who not only has some great knowledge, but wants to share that knowledge, wants them to be as good or better than he or she is, right? And if I can do those two things, then I could be really successful at accomplishing the stuff that was just interesting to me at the time, which was like the internet and how internet brought just massive change to marketing. And so from there, I started a blog. I did everything I could to teach myself on my own time. In North Carolina, when we lived down there, my wife was a teacher, so she'd go to school 6 a.m., early teacher days, and I would just blog from 6:15 to 7:15 every morning before I got ready for the day and went off to work. I just make sure that was part of my daily habit. And then one day, the folks from HubSpot sent me a direct message on Twitter and were like, "Hey, do you want to come work for us?" And this was HubSpot was less than 100 employees, about $10 million in revenue at the time. And the advice I'd give to everybody is that there will be a moment in your life where you have a very big decision. And saying yes to that decision is much lower risk than you think it is. You will think that you have to so much about your life is going to change. It's going to be so hard. I sold a house, 2 cars. I moved to a place I had only spent 48 hours of my entire life, but I did so because I had conviction and I believed that was the right thing to do. And it turns out that one decision fundamentally changed my life. It was awesome. Just really remarkable.
Kipp, that is awesome, man. I love hearing that. And I love hearing how your mindset of being the student of the world, as you put it, and how your constant state of not just teaching and learning and the interplay between the two, and hearing how that shaped your journey from Marshall all the way to HubSpot.
Yeah,
it's an amazingly proud moment for all of us here at Marshall. I'm seeing what you've done. And moving into HubSpot a little bit, can you talk a little bit more about HubSpot? HubSpot is really known for revolutionizing marketing with its concept of inbound marketing. Can you give us a primer on inbound marketing by comparing it to traditional marketing?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 things about HubSpot that people need to understand. Before you even go into the marketing stuff, which I want to talk to you all about, you have to understand the business model a little bit, right? And the business model is a subscription software business model. And so software as a service, SaaS business. And it turns out that SaaS businesses are just a really great business model. And if you're somebody who's going to work in technology, start your own technology company, a subscription business model is just a far superior business model than traditional on-prem or license or any other kind of pricing model and packaging model you can think of for technology today. And so that business model gave HubSpot a lot of strength in the early days. But the thing that I really admire about our co-founders, Brian and Dharmesh, is that they had a very simple vision at the founding of the company, which they founded a couple years before I joined, was basically like, the internet has changed the way people shop and buy. And because of that, businesses need the right tools, the right education, and the right help to actually adapt to that change. And that is fundamentally what inbound marketing was. We saw an observation that, man, people were ignoring cold calling. They were fast forwarding through commercials on your DVR. They weren't looking at the yellow pages. You got to remember, this was over a decade ago, a long time ago now. The world was a very, very different place in 2009. And a lot of this was not commonplace and given in the world like it is today. And so we basically said, you actually have to do different things if you're a business, right? You have to bring people to you instead of going out and interrupting them. You need to blog, you need to create a YouTube channel, you need to engage in email marketing, marketing automation, all of these different strategies, but they were all based on one idea: is how could you provide more value to your prospective customer than anybody else? And that might be, I have a great article on my blog that somebody finds, reads, and it's like, oh wow, this company clearly understands this problem better than anybody else I've seen. I want to engage in a conversation with them. That's like a very basic example. And for us, we went out and we taught people how to do it. And we had a very meta job, right? I was doing marketing about marketing to marketers, and our job was to help transform and change the world from renting space and that was really interruptive, that people were ignoring more, to owning really valuable marketing assets that were engaging people and bringing them in.
That's awesome, Kipp. Thanks for giving us a quick intro to inbound. And really, when I first heard of HubSpot, it was really didn't really even know that much about the company. And this is way back in the day when you guys were first starting up. I really just heard about inbound and this company that created this whole idea. So for me, you started off as really thought leaders. That's how I knew HubSpot. But of course, HubSpot isn't just a thought leader in marketing. It's also an amazing company that's been empowering businesses with inbound marketing technology. Can you tell us a little bit more about what HubSpot does and how its platform helps businesses grow of all sizes?
It's funny. The biggest challenge we had in the first couple of years is like, people just didn't know what we did. They're like, we think you guys are great. We love you, but we just don't know what you do. We definitely changed over time. But basically, we provide tools to small, medium-sized, growing businesses who are trying to scale. And those tools range across 3 different disciplines: marketing, so SEO, blogging, website management, marketing automation, then sales, so CRM, sales acceleration, quote to cash, all the things you need to do to basically enable salespeople, have salespeople sell and turn those sales into deals. And then help desk, customer service software. How do you make sure that once you have customers, you can deliver a great experience for them, keep them happy, retain them as customers, have a really good net promoter score, have them really happy through really great customer interactions through help desk software, automation, all that fun stuff. And so we started out as a little marketing technology company and now have grown into a great CRM platform over the last decade. It's been a blast.
Yes, we definitely love HubSpot. And for anyone who's interested in looking some more into it, there's HubSpot for startups. I know we have some aspiring entrepreneurs and early stage entrepreneurs on the call, so I definitely recommend checking that out. And there's also an education platform for anybody who's teaching marketing. So it's a really great tool, and I'm glad you're here today to share a little bit more about it.
Free version of everything. If you just if you're a student, you want to go teach yourself something, you can use free software, get accredited. You can do really great things to put yourself ahead.
Great, thank you. So the title of our webinar today is The New Decade of Marketing, which was inspired by one of your blog posts. So I know you mentioned that's something that's been really important to you, that you've invested a lot of time in for a few years. So we've actually, Ben and I went through and dug through your blogs and saw some of the topics that you've been blogging about recently. So we just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that one specifically. We thought it'd be really helpful. So when you're talking about inbound marketing, you already touched a little bit on just how customer acquisition is different now. Just, people aren't looking in the yellow pages, they're fast forwarding through commercials. On the other side of that, can you talk about how customers or buyers have changed in the past 10 years?
Yeah, the biggest change over the last decade, and that it's going to continue to change over the next decade, it's going to impact everybody's career, is the lack of asymmetry and control that a company has in the buying process, right? It used to be the company had all the power, now the buyer has all the power. The thing that continues to change is actually the buyer power continues to consolidate and continues to grow. And that happens for a few reasons. One, because of technology, because of things like Amazon Web Services, Intuit, Shopify, all of these things, you can now start a business pretty cheaply. What would have cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a business, you can now do for like 10,000 or maybe 1,000 if you're really scrappy. And because of that, there's more choices in the market than ever before, right? And when there's more choices, the buyer has more power, right? Supply demand moves into the favor of the buyer because you don't have a monopoly or, a few folks just holding all the cards. And so because of that, the buyer is transferred. The other thing is this, like, the internet continues to democratize the buying experience. Like, I personally now get super frustrated anytime I go to somebody's website and they don't have their pricing on it. And I don't care if you're selling like big industrial turbines. It's like, look, everybody knows what this costs. There are tons of startups out there right now to basically make pricing books transparent, all of these things. So there's still people doing a lot of work to hold on to like the vestiges of control and lack of transparency. And the reality is that's just not how people are going to shop over the next decade. People are going to shop with people they trust, with people who are transparent and open. And I think the really controversial thing that's going to be hard for a lot of businesses is that people are going to shop with businesses that they believe they have a moral alignment with. I think we live in a world where like social injustice and morality has never been bigger and more front and center. And people are going to buy from companies, one, who look like them, have a diverse range of employees, diverse range of perspective, and share the same values they do and are clear on what those values. I think it's going to be super hard for companies to be neutral in a way that they were over the last decade. And so you look at all of those changes put together, the power is really shifted to the buyer, and that goes across B2B or B2C. I think that's just people changes, societal changes that have happened.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I've noticed that like more and more, you have these mission-driven, purpose-driven companies who have really well-defined missions, values, and morals. And I think you're right in how that all plays into their branding. I also know that one of the big topics and points that you'll stress in your blogs is a lot about like building out delightful customer experiences. Yeah. And with this changing landscape of the way that buyers are thinking and the way that customers are changing and society is changing, how can marketers go about revamping their marketing strategy to create delightful customer experiences?
So part of it, there's a few different things. First is technology. I don't know about you all. If I'm looking to buy something online and it's not on Amazon, I'm basically like, oh, is this merchant using Shopify? Because if they're not, I'm probably just not going to buy it. Because I know if they're using Shopify, I can just use Apple Pay or PayPal, and the transaction can be done in like 2 seconds. And it's not like I'm going to have to create an account, fill out all this information, have this friction to buy this like small thing that I might need for my son or whatever that may be, right? And so first of all, it's like, do you have the right technology platform and infrastructure in place to reduce needless friction? Do you have the data on your prospects and your customers in one place? Are you able to facilitate the interactions they need to have with your business in a way that puts the onus on you, not puts the onus on them, right? The more onus you put on your buyer and your customer, the more friction you're introducing, the worse the experience they're going to have. And the worse the experience, the higher the friction, the more likely they're going to go buy from somebody else, right? So if you're going to create a remarkable customer experience, step one is technology. Step two is trust and education. So much of us, whether we're buying a big business purchase or we're buying a small consumer purchase or anything in between, we want to buy from people we trust, and we want to feel informed about that decision. We want to feel like we're making a really good decision. And so you have to have a marketing and sales process that is educating and helping and enabling the buyers versus hard selling and trying to close those folks. And you're going to see the world continue to move to a much more consultative marketing and education process. And that means on the marketing side, instead of hitting people with product details, what you call speeds and feeds, right? My product is 10% better than this other product. It is, well, why do you even need this thing to begin with? And how is this thing going to make your life better? How's it going to make your family's life better or your business better? And how can we present that to you in a way that you know that we are being transparent and open? We're talking about the faults in this solution just as much as we're talking about the benefits and the value of that solution. When you put those things together, you start to craft an experience that is customer into your business versus your business out to the customer, right? You're solving for what the customer needs, the problems they have. And this is Brad's whole thing, this is Intuit's whole thing, right? Is that it's actually super hard to be customer centric because you have to get out of your own mind and you have to get into the mind of your customers. But by doing that, you can create really remarkable experience. You know, at HubSpot, we have a staff meeting every month where we bring in customers who have experienced a bunch of pain on a topic, and we just hear it, and it hurts, right? It stinks to hear all the things you could do better all the time. But that's actually the only way you actually get better, and the way you can put yourself into the pain that the customer have and actually deliver a better experience next month or next quarter compared to what you've been doing up to this point.
Yeah, I think by empathizing with the customer and really understanding the customer, you start noticing and you have a finger on the pulse of how they change. And as you do that, you can quickly adapt. That said, we have businesses out there, and this is something that you report in your blog, that the average lifespan of a business website is almost 3 years old, right? Like it takes them 3 years before they change it, which is a long time in the marketing world. So I have a two-part question for you. First, can you talk about the marketing challenges that businesses face which prevent them from being able to quickly adapt and deliver experiences that their customers love? And second, what can they do about it? What can businesses do to help their digital marketing systems become more agile and adaptable to these rapidly changing times that we're in, rapidly changing customers?
Look, one of the things that has changed the most in marketing over the last 10 to 15 years, it's like, I don't know, when I was started in marketing, most people were still on the brand, story, kind of product marketing side. And then marketing has exploded. It is now incredibly broad. The meetings that I go to, like I might be talking about like a visual aesthetic, then I might be talking about an API, then I might be talking about like audience segmentation and back-end data, and like it keeps going. And it's like, man, keeping all that broad range of stuff clear in your head is like not an easy thing to do. And especially if you're a business whose job is to not specialize in this stuff, which everybody's out there beyond my business is, like, it makes it even harder. And so what you have to do is, I think, two simple things. One, like, consolidate technology, limit the amount of technology, UIs, passwords, data syncs, all of that kind of stuff. Simplify your technology to the extent that you can. And two, simplify your strategy. What you look at, I have had the good fortune of traveling the world and talking to so many great business leaders and marketers. And what you find out is that a successful company has one good marketing channel. A great company has two, and a remarkable company has three or more. And so if you're just getting started, you don't have to be great at all these things. You just have to say, look, over the next 18 months, I'm going to be really great at search engine optimization, or email marketing, whatever the channel you're really going to think that works for your audience. Just focus on getting really, really great at that, as opposed to trying to do everything. And in trying to do everything, I think people often get stuck.
Great advice. I know that Brad is always saying, like, companies, they typically fail more from indigestion than starvation, right? Because they try to do too much as opposed to too little, and being uncomfortably narrow, and picking the right channels. Moving on to a little bit of a different topic. There's a topic that I'm learning more about, and I listened to one of your podcasts, and it turned me on to it, was this idea of product-led growth.
Yeah.
It seems like a really up-and-coming strategy that I'd love to learn more about and share it with everybody here today. Can you give us a high-level overview of product-led growth, and what type of companies would be best served by it?
Yeah, what I would tell people on the call is, like, every software company I feel like I talk to right now is like, product-led growth is on the thing that they're trying to achieve. I literally talked to 3 different companies for different reasons last week, customers and stuff, and they're all working on making that change. And so what does that actually mean? It means a couple of things. It means at the fundamental basis of it, what our CEO Brian Halligan likes to say, people want to try before they buy. It means that they can use something before they have to pay money for it. That's the most basic interpretation of product-led growth. And from there, what that actually translates into is that it's largely for software companies or companies that have some type of online product. You basically change a pricing model. You have transparent pricing. You normally have a free product or a free trial version of your product, and somebody can go and experience that product without humans. That is the important part, without humans or with minimal human help. You know, maybe there's a chat agent who answers a couple of questions as they're working on getting set up or doing that, but little to no human help. And the reason people like product-led growth is because it's very efficient. When you don't have humans, your ability to scale and grow becomes much greater, which is awesome. And it's what customers want. You know, I want to go and try something at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night when my son's asleep, right? I don't want to like have to wait to talk to a salesperson on Wednesday. By then, like I've forgotten that I even needed to think about or try that thing that I was interested in on Sunday night. And so it solves for the buyer. It solves for that great customer experience. It also solves for trust and transparency. I'm not selling you a bill of goods. You're using the thing right now without paying me any money. You know what the user experience of the software is like, you have a feeling for what it can do for you, and you could make a much more informed decision than a sales rep walking you through a PowerPoint.
And I know HubSpot does that really well. I can think, you know, Dropbox and Canva. Are there any other companies or brands out there doing that really well and that you would recommend people to look into?
So many awesome folks doing product-led growth. Asana's doing a great job. Asana and Monday.com on the project management side of thing. I'm a huge fan of Lemonade, who are disrupting the insurance industry with a complete product-led growth, humanless insurance experience. It's a great product. I'm a very happy customer of theirs. Honestly, what you will start to find if you just pick a category in the market and you look at who's leading, the people who are leading are normally doing product-led growth in some way, shape, or form, right? And it kind of doesn't matter what that is. Like on the accounting side, Intuit and Xero, they're doing product-led growth. You kind of pick a category. The folks, you know, one of the reasons Canva really, I think, took it to Adobe and is growing at a massive rate is because they really embrace product-led growth in a way that Adobe hadn't. Doesn't mean that Adobe is not an amazing business, but so much of their focus for their creative tools is on the enterprise side, not on the self-service side.
So another big thing right now, so there's product-led growth, but a lot of people are also talking about content creation, like videos and blogs. Yeah. So what advice would you give to small business owners with limited resources for content creation? I know I mentioned the iCenter and the Business Incubator at the beginning of the call. So, you know, a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, small businesses don't have a lot of money to do high production videos. So where would people see the largest ROI or bang for their buck with content creation?
With content creation, I'm going to say something that I think is very important. It is more about what you create than how it is created. Like if you really understand your customer and you understand really what they are looking for, what their pains are, and you know what would really be valuable to them, then the production value of it actually doesn't matter that much, right? You don't have to have the flashiest video in the world or the most perfectly written blog post. Especially a lot of small business owners and especially in a lot of niche industries, like there's actually just no good information out there. Just like having insight into what your customers want. I'm kind of floored by this, right? Like I don't know about the rest of us. I go to Google every day and don't find answers that I'm looking for. And these are normally like commerce related or business related searches, right? And I'm still floored by the opportunity that is out there. We've been doing this for a long time, but the opportunity is still massive. And so what I would suggest is pick a format, text or video. Text is cheaper and faster, so it might be a better place to start. And then understand what your customers' pains are and then what they're searching for. You use Google Webmaster Tools, SEMrush, different SEO tools to understand search volume on those topics. And then figure out how can you create one of the best resources out there on that topic And what you'll find is people start finding you through Google. Your sales folks, if you have salespeople, will start using that as a way to build trust in their email or follow-ups with prospects and customers. And it'll start transforming how your business actually works and how your go-to-market and customer experience actually starts to operate.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So we've talked a lot about the future, but of course, right now, a lot of businesses are having a hard time dealing with the present pandemic. You have an interesting blog post that discusses the impact of COVID on business from a marketing and sales perspective. Yeah. Can you share some key findings from the data you report in that blog post and some recommendations you make to help businesses get back on track?
Yeah, 2020 has been a really hard year.
It has.
And it's like, I tell everybody right now, anybody asks me how I'm doing, I'm like, oh, I'm 2020 fine. You know, 2020 fine is different than 2019 fine. I'm doing 2020 fine. You know, it's a hard time, and it's hard for everybody, but it's hard for everybody in different ways. And when you apply that to what happened over the last 6 months with COVID, some businesses saw incredible growth, right? That they can't even handle. And some other businesses in other sectors basically went to zero. And that kind of disparity is horrible and challenging. And when you look at the data, we looked at data across all of our customer base, right? 90,000 plus customers around the world. We found a few things. In the first couple of months of COVID, we saw marketing interest pick up in terms of people were opening emails more, people were visiting websites at a higher rate, people were in that research phase because they had the ability and time to do that because the world had just changed, right? But what we had seen is that, you know, engagement with sales reps email, right? It was lower than it was like during the week of Christmas in 2019, you know, when everybody's off on vacation and that last holiday week of the year. And so it was a really hard time to be a sales rep. And what we've seen is that is slowly recovering on the sales side and slowly coming back a little bit more towards normal, but at a higher level on the marketing side over the last 6 months. And that the other look that we saw is that, yeah, there are some industries that were really taken to zero. Travel, hospitality, those things were killed. And if your technology, infrastructure, a lot of consumer goods, you saw rapid growth. And what we have seen regardless, though, is that this crisis has accelerated the need for digital transformation. That businesses across the board are moving more online. They realize, like, look, I need digital signing. I need a way to like take payments digitally, all of those things, right? Like we talked about product-led growth, like Stripe is amazing at product-led growth, and they're transforming how the whole world does payments. And I imagine if you looked at behind the covers, what's happening here, just a ton of people moving online at a much faster rate than they would have without COVID happening.
So given that there's this massive shift towards digital transformation, and I guess not necessarily shift, but acceleration, right? Like it was already happening, but it's happening much faster. Can you maybe give the audience a couple of good companies that have done inbound marketing specifically? And you mentioned some companies that were doing product-led growth well, but is there a company out there or two companies out there that you could have the audience check out on their own time to see how they're doing inbound marketing really well, so they might be able to map it out into their marketing strategies? And for these companies that you're about to suggest, what makes them so good? What should they be looking out for?
Yeah, so there's companies at all ranges of the spectrum that are doing really successful inbound marketing. You know, one HubSpot customer who was on the winning side of COVID, it was a company called Kettlebell Kings, and they're a fitness company, and they were doing great inbound marketing before that. They were running a really great business. They were creating free workouts and education, and how do you pick a kettlebell? How do you do all of this thing? And what they did an interesting job of, what I've been looking at, is how people who basically no longer had a product to sell because demand outstripped supply so much that they had to continue to try to get the business moving, and marketing and education was one of the few ways they could do that while they were waiting for physical supply, right? And I think they did a nice job of making inbound marketing happen through a period of time where they were just like a month or two, they just didn't have anything to sell. And that's got to be a hard, painful thing to have as a business, right? And so that's a big part of it. The flip side is, on the bigger scale side of that, if you look at a company like SurveyMonkey, who's a HubSpot customer, they're doing a really great job of transforming how they bring businesses in to get insights with COVID, right? They took COVID as an opportunity, like, oh, we're all about insights at SurveyMonkey, and this is a period of time where people need insights more than ever. The more change, the more insights you need. And they really rolled out some really remarkable content, email campaigns, programs to really to help inform and bring people in who were looking for, how do I just figure out what the new normal is for me, for my business, for my customers, for my little part of the world. So there are a couple examples.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And this is the last question before we get to the audience Q&A. Again, one of your blogs, you mentioned like some interview questions that you'll ask potential new hires at HubSpot. And one of those questions is a very simple question, but I love it because it gets to the heart of so many things, is why do you love marketing? So I'm going to turn that around on you, Kipp. So Kipp, why do you love marketing?
I love marketing because it's the ultimate meritocracy. Right? There's no accreditation certification body that tells you that you have to, like if you're an accountant, you kind of need to be a CPA. If you're a doctor, you kind of have to go to the medical board, right? If you're a lawyer, the bar association kind of controls what you know. Because there's no governing body, there's like a cause and effect there is that there's a lot of change and there's a lot of fidelity. And any profession that has a lot of fidelity has a lot of opportunity. Right? Because it means it's changing so much that you can jump onto a wave of change and transform your business, transform your career, transform your family, whatever that may be, right? And I love it because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. People on my team work all over the world, all over America. What it matters is that they have the ability to learn and grow and do great work. And I think that is a remarkable thing. And I love the flip side of it is I love the customer side of it. I love that we are the first thing that the customer experiences, whether it be what the logo looks like, whether it be what the homepage on your website looks like, whether it be the awesome article that they first read that changes their perception about who you are as a company and as a brand. Marketing has all that responsibility now. Marketing, that used to be sales' responsibility back in the day, and that's all shifted to marketing. And having that responsibility and opportunity is really, really fun. And you get to solve new and different problems all the time. And that makes marketing a blast.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kipp, for looking into your crystal ball into the new decade of marketing, sharing your thoughts on why you love marketing, your time at Marshall. And at this point, I'd love to hand things back over to Dr. Nancy Langton, who will be handling the Q&A from the audience.
Thanks, Kipp, Ben, and Tricia, for an enthusiastic and very informative discussion today. It will help us all think more about marketing trends in the coming decade. I'll now read some of the questions that were posted during the event and some that arrived by email before the event. The first question is, hi, Kipp, I'm from Williamstown as well. Go Yellow Jackets. Any advice about coming from a small town and moving away to a bigger city?
One, you might not have to, right? We live in a different world today. I don't know if I would have had to move the way I had to move. Remote work is transforming how we all work. And so one, you might want to, and that might just be what you want for your life. And if that is, you should. Look, I live in the heart of Boston. Living in the city is awesome. It's less awesome during a pandemic, but the last 10 years have been really great. And if that's what you're looking for, you should definitely do it. I would just open up that you might not have to. The second part of that is the thing that matters, the thing that we didn't talk about yet today is our co-founder Dharmesh, who's one of my favorite human beings in the entire world, always reminds us all that, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? And your life is much more about who you spend time with than where you spend time. And like for me, I needed to move someplace so that I could spend time with people who really helped me learn, who really pushed me, who really helped change and evolve who I was. You might not need to, but the thing that matters is that you spend your personal and professional time with people who are going to make you better. And being in a city sometimes might help with that, but also just picking a company, right? What we talk a lot about at HubSpot, people in the first 3 to 7 years of their career tend to optimize more for earnings than for learnings, right? And if you take a little bit of a haircut on the amount of money you can make to go work with really great, smart people, then your long-term return is incredible. Like I'm representative of this. I could have made a lot more money in the first 10 years of my life, but you know, it worked out for me very well in the end. And I think for people who have that mindset, they can be really successful. So if you want to move to a city, just say yes and do it. It's not that hard. But the bigger thing is be around people who are going to help you learn and get better.
Great. Okay. Another question is, the question reads, does this apply equally to B to C? And I believe that was posted during the time you were talking about being a company being transparent about putting pricing and other information like that on their website.
Yeah. So what I would, it applies to both. I'll give a little bit more color commentary on that. What I would say is, if you look at the transparency of pricing, especially on the internet today, it's actually pretty comparable between B2B and B2C. Where it changes is when the pricing increases, right? The higher dollar value of a pricing, the less transparent it is, right? And I think that you have an opportunity, whether you're a consumer company or a business company, of having clear, transparent pricing. Sometimes you just have to say, like, what do people actually think? And you know what they think when you have like a call for price thing? It's like, oh, they're going to see how much money I have, and they're going to try to get more money out of me than the other person. And like in a world of like moral fairness and justice, I would argue transparent pricing is important, right? Like it matters. You pay the same no matter where you're from, what type of business, the color of your skin, doesn't matter. You pay the same amount of money. And I think that fairness really, really matters. And I think that's why you're going to see transparency come to pricing across all businesses, across all industries.
Okay, great. Another question is, what are your thoughts about marketing driving systematic change within a company to what's next, not just what's now? We are an industry leader in customer service and customer experience, but in marketing, we also see a ton of opportunity to improve, tons capitalized. Mm-hmm. How can we sell these ideas to management?
So I think one of the interesting things about marketing, right, is what everybody needs to understand is the farther away you go from the deal, from the transaction of money for whatever thing you are buying and selling, the more risk is involved. Right? The more uncertainty around whether this thing I will do will work or not, which means if you're a sales leader or a salesperson, your time directly equates to money. You have to manage your time very effectively, and you are solving for the short term, the here and now. If you're a marketer, I look at myself a lot more like a venture capitalist than I am like a bond trader or like a money market account, right? I have an amount of human time and capital that I can invest. And what matters for me is I actually make some high beta, high risk investments that are going to have really great long-term rewards. I don't need to be successful in everything I do in marketing. I just need a couple of those things to be really successful. And marketing has kind of the way to have outsized return in that regard. But if you're a CFO, a CEO, it's kind of hard to get your head around that discrepancy because so much of the business, especially on sales and customer service, very predictable, very short term. And what you have to do to sell those ideas is you have to say like, look, we're building a business for the long term. And marketing sets the foundation for long-term strategy, long-term changes in the customer experience, long-term leverage in terms of how we acquire new customers and retain our existing customers. And here are some different ways that we could invest that, you know, might make it harder for us in the short term, but man, in the long term are going to change the trajectory of our business.
Okay, I have another question that came in earlier. It says, and again, this has to do with the transparency of pricing. Mm-hmm. Can you mention some other items that are critical to have on the website? In other words, to be transparent about? You mentioned, so I know you also mentioned social responsibility, but maybe there's some other things.
Yeah, I mean, social responsibility, one. Pricing is definitely one. Like just clear product details, right? Like just real quality product details and information. It's really hard to find some of that on the web still today. Who's behind the business matters. Like who's leading the team? Like who are people going to be working with if they choose to work with you? You know, I always think about it as like a buying decision and a career decision. Like those are life-changing events for people, and you need to do everything you can to build trust, to help them know that you're the right person to help transform what they're trying to do.
Great. Here's another question. You mentioned that businesses should talk about their faults as much as their strengths. This is hard for businesses to do. Can you give any advice on how to frame this so businesses can be transparent while not talking people out of their product?
Look, this is classic persuasion, right? The first thing you have to do here is argue your faults before somebody else does it for you in a way that you don't want them to, right? And so it's how do you present the things that you know people are gonna pound on you for, and you either need to say, well, you shouldn't pound on us for those because that thing's really good, and here's like a customer who's having a great experience using this thing and it's working really well, or you have to just acknowledge like, look, we are working on making this aspect of it better, and part of it is like talking about what you're doing in the future, right? And so it might be, no matter what product you are building or service you're offering, it has a life cycle, right? You've got a version today, but a month from now, it's going to be better in these ways because you're going to do work in that next month. And telling people where you're going is a good way of kind of acknowledging your faults without like making them negative, right? It's like, oh, look, we rolled out this awesome new product, and over the next year, we're going to work on making it twice as fast. So you don't have to come out and say, it's kind of slow right now because we're just kind of like figuring it out. It's, oh no, it's pretty good right now, but we're going to make it twice as fast, over the next year. And I think those are the ways that you can kind of address those things early on in the process.
Great. Another question from the audience today is, what are your thoughts on marketing an automated investment program? We are a regional CPA firm competing with national CFP planning firms.
So yeah, so how do they compete with the bigger folks, right?
Yeah.
The way you compete is what we've spent the last 45 minutes talking about. Those bigger companies most of the time get farther away from their customers and lose sight on what their customers actually need. You guys are closer to your customers. Use that as an opportunity to build a much better customer experience. Like have somebody go shop with one of the big folks and figure out all of the pain points that they go through in that process. Or maybe you've got a customer who was using one of the big folks who came over to you. Get feedback from them. What's different? And then obsess about, all right, well, if it takes 3 weeks to get kicked off with the big folks, how can I make it 3 days to get kicked off with me? And what do I need to change, whether it be technology, business process, how we work, so that it's just it is just an exponentially different experience in interacting with my business than it is with those large national businesses. And then a few magical things happen. Your customers become way happier, right? Because they're having a way better experience. They start telling other people. So your cost of marketing acquisition goes down because word of mouth in the market increases because your customers are happier. And then you have better customer stories to take to new prospective customers who are considering you and choosing between the big folks. So change your customer experience, invest in marketing that's going to help build trust early on. If there are regional nuances, like there are in a lot of financial industries, right? Like lead with those so that folks know you have specialized regional skills and expertise that set you apart with, somebody who's sitting 500 miles away from here who might only cursory have that knowledge and information.
Okay, we have another one. It says, this is pivoting from business marketing, but have you ever community or state marketing strategies to help West Virginia build back a business base and attract young entrepreneurs like yourself to stay in or return to West Virginia?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think about this one all the time. This is the topic that led me to talk to Brad Smith. I have seen the world, and I've seen the world in all of its faults, and I've seen it in all of its awesomeness. And West Virginia is awesome. It has so much to offer the world. I'm talking to you all now from the great state of Vermont. I have a house here and up on the mountain, and I wish I won. I wish my house in the mountains was in West Virginia, but that's another story for a different day. But Vermont and lots of states have done what West Virginia needs to do. It's broadband access. $50 million. $50 million, and everybody in West Virginia can have great broadband access. Like, you're talking about a world of remote work where you're going to completely transform rural communities all across America. West Virginia has the opportunity to be on the forefront of that. And it's pretty straightforward. It's broadband accessibility. It is understanding at the state level the stories you need to tell. And I look at West Virginia and it's like, man, it's got 4 great quadrants of opportunity. It's got 2 great universities who have their own specialties, who can bring people in. It's got a great industrial and manufacturing worker base and supply for businesses. And then it's got great tourism in the mountains and in the Eastern Panhandle. And I think nobody has packaged that story tightly enough and communicated that story well as like the very clear list of business investments that need to happen to make it come true. And those things are things such as broadband accessibility, business legislative changes that open up opportunities to bring in entrepreneurs, whether it be from technology, whether it be from hospitality, whether it be through tourism related things like distilleries, breweries, all of those things change the landscape of a state. Like where I'm sitting right now in Vermont, they made some changes on that and had a really welcoming environment, and it's completely transformed the state here. And I think that West Virginia has the opportunity to follow a similar path and to have a really remarkable next 100 years if it chooses to.
Okay, great. We have time for one last question. And this says, could you please tell students in a couple sentences of why students should pursue digital marketing as their career choice?
That's a good question. I'll give the couple sentences part is tricky. It's always changing. You'll always be learning. You'll never be bored, and you might make some money. Like that's the reality of it. Like that's the very, very basic thing. You won't be bored. It's a worthy profession to pursue. I've enjoyed it. If it's something you're passionate about, it has the ability to help you learn, and if you're really lucky, change your life.
Okay, this wraps it up for our 7th HERD 2020 Insight Small Business webinar. We really appreciate your time, Kipp, and the great discussion that you've all had today. We want to announce our next webinar that will be in 2 weeks on October 12th. It is titled Maintaining Employee Privacy in the Age of COVID-19. It will feature current faculty member Kevin Knotts and business professional and lawyer Jenna Mazzitti. Look for your registration email to arrive shortly. Please share this email invite with anyone you know who might benefit from this event. We appreciate your participation, and always remember, we are Marshall.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kipp.